Welcome to the Jerusalem Fund Gallery's exhibition titled Palestinians Meanwhile. We're here with the photographer who took the images for the show, Elena Farsakh. Elena, thank you for coming and speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
I have a couple of questions that I think our audience might be interested in. First of all, when we show them later on some pictures of the exhibition, they will notice that there's a rather large number of them, and we did have to choose from an even greater number.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you engaged with people to get these images?
Well, as you just commented on the large number of photographs, I used to work with film, and that was a little bit more difficult because you had to worry about changing the film and everything else. A good thing about that was during the time you were changing film, you got a little bit of a chance to talk to people a little bit more. They became curious about the camera. They wanted to see what you were doing, and that created kind of a bond. The upside of digital is that you can take a lot of pictures. You don't have to stop to reload. A bad thing about digital is most people all over the world are familiar with digital, and especially the kids like to see how they look afterwards. They know that they have that right to the immediate satisfaction, and if they don't like a picture, so it's good to sort of avoid that notion, to not let them see one, because then they want to see all of them, and that's very disruptive, even with people you don't know, particularly the kids. But the best way to engage them, the camera that I use is not a big invasive camera. It's you know, above a point and shoot, but not much above that, and so you don't have that whole aura of I'm taking a big important picture, and people don't get intimidated.
Yeah, you've definitely achieved the notion of just taking snapshots in time. That brings me to the next question, which is the title of our show, Palestinians Meanwhile. Can you talk a little bit about how we came upon that title?
Well, as you know, part of it came from you, and the idea of titling it Palestinians Meanwhile came together because the whole notion of Palestinians Meanwhile, that certainly crops up in a lot of news stories. You know, what are the people themselves doing meanwhile, while everybody else is going through these motions of having peace, making the peace process, which is a big souffle of nothing as far as most people are concerned. There's a t-shirt that they sell in Ramallah. It says same, same. And I think this is kind of the mode most people are in Palestine, whether they're getting themselves a new leader or the U.S. is getting a new, seemingly liberal and responsive leader. People are more of the mindset, I'll believe it when I see it. And so the idea of people living their lives meanwhile, and really that can take the form any country you live in. Certainly there are many people who are unhappy with things as they are economically, health care, all these other things, but you still have to go on. You still have your various cycles of life that you can participate in. And what was important to me was to show Palestinians as people, as regular people, as we are here, as the Israelis are there in their circumstances, just to have that that notion of family of man, like the Edward Steichen notion, that everybody goes through the same things, no matter where you are.
Yes, we've seen that quite a bit in the images that you have of, for example, the wedding, and people going to school, riding the school bus, selling things on the street, and just sort of sitting in chairs, waiting for things to happen. Where were most of these images taken?
Well, there are no images here of Gaza, unfortunately, and the situation there is vastly different from the situation on the West Bank. However, I really am of the mindset, and I think most regular Palestinians are of the mindset, this notion of these divisions, they're very arbitrary and meaningless, because you know, when you're not in Palestine, you don't say, oh, that's somebody affiliated with Hamas, that's somebody, Fatah, that's PFLP, that's a Palestinian, you know, Christian, Muslim, whatever. We don't have those divisions, and those divisions, I think, can be erased pretty quickly. So, you know, these were pictures that were done in various places on the West Bank, mostly, although there are some from Akka and places like that, and I have Jerusalem, which is still Palestine. But the people, you know, everybody suffers under the same occupation. There are little tweaks and variations to how that affects people in their daily lives, you know, whether it's the checkpoint issues of getting from here to there. You know, but people have very serious issues as well, and I think more relatable for people here, the notion of maybe being in love with somebody in one part of Palestine, and because of the occupation and all the restrictions, they can't go and live with their loved one and their families and things like that. So to me, those are the much more poignant human aspects that really don't get much coverage here. And you know, as we've talked about, the fatigue of misery, you know, absorbing all these images of misery. And now, of course, we have the Haitians, and, you know, and how awful that is. And I think people are very able to put themselves in other people's shoes. But in certain circumstances, and of course it's a matter of knowing those people, because we care so much about the Haitians is in large part due to the fact that the media has really done its part this time, because really how can you go wrong if you're covering just a general human misery? There's nobody to blame, really. But you know, it feels a little hard for Palestinians with everything that's happened with Gaza. Now they're having some serious flooding in Gaza as well. But also Gazans have been trying to put together some aid for the Haitians, that they can really identify whether it's a man-made catastrophe or a God-made catastrophe, a natural catastrophe, that they can put themselves very easily in that position. And the Gazans probably have more empathy for the Haitians than anybody else on the planet. So.
That said, we did see some very powerful images in the exhibition. Do you have a favorite?
A favorite. I don't know that I have a favorite in particular. Any one picture. I guess the one that's coming to my mind is I did some pictures of a storyteller. A fellow was telling stories to a bunch of children in the, I guess it was the Greek Orthodox Church in Birzeit. And the kids are very well engaged with him. In this particular photo, you do not see the guy himself. He's in the middle of walking through the aisle between the two sets of kids. And on one side, on the left side, the kids are looking up at him and smiling and very engaged. But on the other side, there's a kid, and he's just kind of by himself, and he's got his head in his hand and kind of just looking forward, like his mind is someplace else. And I guess that's the one I like, because, you know, people, they do get engaged in various activities, but, you know, you still have the overall thing. And also you have your regular day-to-day problems with your family and, you know, growing up, and, you know, the usual stuff.
Exactly. That really does emphasize to us all that Palestinians and non-Palestinians share the most basic human values. Before we go out and have a little walkthrough of the exhibit, what's next on the agenda for you?
Well, I have a lot of things that I plan to do when I am able to return to Palestine. I have some ideas. I have an idea for a book specifically, and it probably will be more, it will be film most likely, and probably black and white, something to do with the destroyed villages where people come from, and doing portraits of people in that realm. So that's something I'd really like to work on, and I have some other ideas about things as well, so
Great.
we'll just see.
Well, that sounds very promising, and hopefully we'll be able to share it when that project is completed. Thank you very much for talking with us today.